The Legoverse goes crazy, the Space Marines are back, and our hometown film festival returns. It's been a retrospective week in sci-fi. The Star Wars Legoverse gets its own series. Warhammer 40k's Space Marines are back. And a look ahead to this year's Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival. Welcome to Ion Sci-Fi, I'm Raymond Fedora. The LEGO Star Wars franchise comes to life as Rebuild the Galaxy hits screens this week. The 4-episode miniseries is based on the extensive Star Wars presence in the LEGO product lineup. The story follows ordinary guy Sig Griebling, who stumbles on an ancient artifact which randomly rearranges the entire Legoverse, resulting in some interesting configurations. Suddenly, the galaxy is awash with bounty-hunting Ewoks, and most disturbing of all, Darth Jar Jar, an evil Sith Lord who apparently has command of a dark version of the Millennium Falcon. Desperate to return things to the way they were, Sig enlists the help of Jedi Bob and the old universe version of Luke Skywalker, voiced by Mark Hamill. Creators and showrunners Dan Hernandez and Benji Sammet have plenty of experience in animation, having worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pokemon movies, as well as The Addams Family 2, although this is their first Star Wars project. Naturally, LEGO have released several sets tied in with the series, including the Dark Millennium Falcon. LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy is available on Disney Plus from September 13. The latest installment in the Warhammer 40k franchise has been released this week. Space Marine 2 is the squad-based shooter sequel to the 2011 original and sees the return of Demetrian Titus as the main playable character. He's joined by fellow Space Marines Chiron and Gadriel, who can be played by others in co-op mode or by AI. The forces of chaos are back as enemies, with Titus and his team also facing the Tyranids, insectoid bad guys whose sole purpose is to consume biomatter. The bad guys can be fought using a mix of melee and ranged combat depending on their strengths. The game has received positive reviews, with combat called out as particularly satisfying and spread across well-developed environments, even if the gaming itself isn't particularly innovative. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is available for PlayStation 5, PC, and Xbox Series X and S from September 9. The Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival returns to the heart of Sydney for 2024, featuring 2 world premiere features in its program. Opening night is showing Heal, an Australian film that follows a grief-stricken farmer as he uses a time travel device to reunite himself with his lost loved one, his dog. On the way, he encounters those he's left behind, driving him toward a painful confrontation with the state of his life. Still on the farm, Canadian feature The Beehive sees a family confronting a strange alien pod they discover on their property after a meteor shower. From the US, Black-Eyed Susan is an R-rated exploration of AI's impact on an overlooked field of robotics, sex dolls. Those are just the titles that caught our eye. The full program is available at the festival website. The Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival opens on Friday, September 20 and runs until Sunday 22nd at Event Cinemas on George Street, Sydney. And joining me now is Festival Director Simon Foster. Welcome back, Simon.
Raymond, we were talking off air just how many years I've been coming to do this interview. I'm very excited to be here for, I think, what do we decide, the third?
Third time.
I'm not going to wait till the end when only the diehards are still watching. I want to say right now, thank you so much to Ion for your support, for everything you've done for us over the years. You guys have been amazing to throw your support behind my little festival. It's been great.
We love the festival and we're going to keep on supporting it.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
So I want to talk about this year's lineup specifically. Tell us about the themes behind it.
Well, it's interesting. This year is it's a far more introspective. It's certainly the most personal program I've put together. I don't want to downplay it in any way, but Whereas in years gone by, we've maybe relied a little bit on the ray guns and spaceships type of sci-fi. This year, it's a very introspective kind of speculative cinema. The themes that run through the movies, it's hard to put to really pin them down, because each of the films are very different, and each of them has a very distinctive auteuristic vision, I guess you could say. And each of them speaks to, yes, speculative ideas and near future ideas, but also really contemporary themes and contemporary sort of notions. So in saying that, we have films from all over the world. It's certainly the most international lineup of films we've put together in a long time. Overall, this feels... there's no grey area where some of this is really commercial and some of this is really arty. It's a real film festival feel to it. And I honestly think this could slide into any international film festival roster around the world. I'm really proud of this year's festival.
And how would you describe how strong the lineup is compared to the other years that we've had?
I've really lent into the international connections I have with festivals like the Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, Fantasia, the London Sci-Fi Film Festival, and I was able to get a lot of the films that have won big awards at those festivals for their Australian premieres. We've got 2 world premieres this year, both Australian films of the features, and a whole lot of Australian premieres running through the rest of the program in both the short form and the long form films. So I'm very keen to talk about some of the key titles in there, because there's some really challenging works. When I say it's a different kind of festival, that happens from session 1, from opening night. Now, as part of opening night, and indulge me a little bit here, but as part of opening night, we give out our Adam Lee Memorial Award. And the gentleman winning it this year, past winners have included Jonathan Strahan, the science fiction author, and Nicholas Scott, the comic book artist, and the guys from Makeup Effects Group, Australia's biggest. And it's to honour those that have devoted their life and their creativity and their talent to genre filmmaking and genre films. This year we're giving it to a friend of mine who passed away earlier this year, a guy called Lee Gambin. Not that well known in Sydney. In Melbourne, he was the head of the Cinemaniacs retrospective, who programmed amazing sort of old sci-fi and old horror and old films that screened down at the Acme Centre down in Melbourne. And one of the only thing he loved more than cinema was dogs. And the 2 films we're screening as part of opening night are dog themed. One is a long short, I guess you could say, called The Reclaimers, which is like a bit like the Quiet Earth, the Emily John Krasinski film from earlier on, in which only the dog can see the invaders. So it's a terrifically scary bit of alien invasion story. And then the main feature is a sort of a mini feature, a 50-minute film called Heel, from a Queensland filmmaker called Thomas Fairchild. And it is about a farmer who loses his best friend, his dog, but is then given the opportunity through a time travel device to maybe reconnect with the dog. So bring your hankies. So like I say, these are very personal stories. And on opening night, we wanted to set the tone for a more personal festival by having these kinds of films. So I hope people come out, because I think they'll be worth it. They're both fantastic movies, and it's a wonderful cause that I think does the memory of Lee, does it proud.
Now, speaking of awards, there are some awards that have already been award winners that have already been announced.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about those.
So what we decided this year was, rather until the end of the festival and wait to give out these awards, we decided to announce key awards in the short film categories and then program those ahead of the film. So The Reclaimers, the opening night short, is the best international short film this year. We will be screening a short film called Edward Has a Tree Inside Him, which is a great name for a film. It's exactly about what it says it's about, and it's the best Australian short, or best student short. No, it's the best student short this year. And for the first time, we've introduced a best web-based series, web or TV series episode. And that's gone to an internet series called Classic, and the season 2, episode 1 pilot called Rose and Estella Get Abducted by Aliens. And that's screening on the Sunday afternoon. And we've got a best animation film, a Spanish film called Chrysanthemum. So they're all on the Event Cinemas website. Those winners have all been announced. And then in the closing night, we'll have the big major awards, or the key awards, the best actors and the best directors and the best films.
Now, you mentioned that Ion Sci-Fi is the official media partner, and we are working together on a particular award, Best of Festival.
Yeah, you guys have been terrific. Last year, The Bystanders, the British film, won Best of the Fest, the Audience Award, I guess you could say. This year, we've got all the feature films, except Chomps, but all the other feature films are up for the Audience Award, audience voting. You go to the Ion Sci-Fi website, and all the details are there about how to vote for the films. I'm so excited to see how the lineup goes, because it is such a diverse range of films. And I know we'll get into talking about the film soon, but I can't stress how unique some of these movies are, and how much I sort of mulled over deciding which of these films should go in the program. Do I want to program these sorts of films? But I digress. Let's talk about this year.
Yes, let's talk about this year's festivals and
yes.
your top picks or your favourites.
All right. I'm going to start with UFO Sweden. Having said all that stuff about them being really personal films and not pandering at all, this one is a real crowd pleaser. This is our Saturday 6 o'clock movie. About 18 months ago, I was traveling through Scandinavia, and UFO Sweden was the blockbuster. It was like their big sort of summer version of a Spielberg film. Tells the story of a young girl who has to take on, become friends with this UFO research group when she believes her father's been abducted by aliens. And from that, it spins this amazingly entertaining sort of Spielbergian, very effects heavy, very sweet story, father-daughter story, the family dynamics in there as you've come to expect from Spielberg films. But yes, UFO Sweden is our Saturday night crowd pleaser, and I'm thrilled to have that as well. I've actually been chasing that for last year's festival and couldn't get it, so I was glad to get it this year.
Any more you want to mention?
Yeah, look, I really should mention two more. The black and white Italian film I mentioned earlier is called The Complex Forms, and it is about a villa in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, where elderly men go to spend their final moments. As it turns out, the people who are running this villa are actually in contact with outer space types, let's just say, and they are complex in their form. When you see these, it's kind of, imagine if a cockroach had been designed to be as big as a car by H.R. Geiger, the guy that did Alien. It's got these incredible sort of tentacles and scales and legs, and when they come down, the elderly men realize that this villa is actually sort of like a feeding ground for these alien invaders. So it looks arty. It's shot in black and white. It's shot by Fabio Diotto, who's this terrific Italian filmmaker who comes from a music video and advertising background. So he can frame these creatures and this black and white film in the most amazing way. The other one I want to mention very quickly, and it's a tough sell. It's our first fully R-rated session, restricted entry. It's called Black-Eyed Susan. First of all, it screens with the musings of a mechatronic mistress, which is a short documentary in which a sex android interviews philosophers about where they think AI tech and sex-based robotics is going to go in the years ahead. So that leads into Black-Eyed Susan. Black-Eyed Susan is a 16mm shot film from a New York independent filmmaker named Scooter McCrae. He hasn't made a film for 16 years. He has decided to take on the issue of the responsibility humans have to robots that will, in the very near future, will start to develop sentient AI and emotive AI. Susan is a robot who has been made to take abuse. She has been made to respond in a positive way to the violence and the sexual degradation that men can give towards her. And we pick up on this story in a shocking opening sequence that is sure to upset a lot of people, but which sets the tone for a film that's really a morality play, in which we ask ourselves, what responsibility do we have to these creatures that we create, these humanoid robots that we create that will ultimately develop their own emotions and their own feelings? Can they still play the role or function in the role that they were created for? It's the darkest thing I've ever programmed. It is a completely R-rated session. Anyone going to this, be warned, it contains some really graphic scenes and some really deep sort of philosophical issues as well. It's my favourite film of the festival because it pushes so many boundaries and because it asks questions about where science fiction where science can go and what role science fiction can play in discussing the implications of that science fiction. So it's called Black Eye Susan, 9 o'clock on the Saturday night, with an asterisk, be warned.
Now let's switch to the closing night, which is also equally as huge. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so it's a funny story. I'd almost had the program locked, and I was looking for a really, really strong closing night film, and a couple had fallen through, and I was sitting on the couch going, how do I lock off this program? And then, just as if by magic, it just dropped into our submission platform, Film Freeway, a film from Luke Spark. Now, fans of science fiction genre know Luke as the director of Rainfall and Occupation Rainfall, the hugely successful Australian alien invasion action films from 2018 and 2020, I think they came out. That seems like a long time ago, but yeah. And he's made this new film, Scurry, which he's only just finished filming in Queensland. It's a 2-person cast. It's all shot in one take, and it all takes place as some kind of alien monster invasion is happening on the surface, and these two characters, a man and a woman, have to scurry in the tunnels beneath a major city. And it is such an exciting film. Luke is a filmmaker who can turn the simplest of concepts into the most thrilling of films, and that's what he's done with Scurry. The two leads, Jamie Costas, that Jamie Costas, the guy who did the famous Robin Williams impersonation all those years ago and is a huge YouTube star and influencer. And the woman is played by Amelia, who is the Australian singer and actress who featured in Paramount Plus's Paper Dolls series, the sort of thinly veiled story of the pop band Bardot early in the year, and she was the lead in that, and this is her first feature film lead role, and she'll be there on the night to shake hands and look beautiful and take all the credit she's going to take for this film. So yeah, Scurry was a good get for us because it ends the session with a world premiere of an Australian film, and I couldn't have asked for anything better.
And everything you've just described is the reason why we're proud to support this every year, so we can't wait to come and see it in person every time. And yes, thank you for coming on the show every year.
I'm thrilled to be here. I love talking to you. I mean, you don't say much, I do all the talking, but yeah, it's great to be here and to be able to talk to you and to the sci-fi fans out there to make the connection.
Thanks, Simon. And that was the week in sci-fi. For more news throughout the week, go to ionsci-fi.com.